Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Power Talk Friday on a well-designed business. It's been a long time, but I have to say there's been a dozen times in 2 years that somebody has said to me, oh, you should do a show on vendors and what it's like to work with vendors. And I actually did an episode with Kimberly Selden on her podcast on my perspective as a vendor. And I haven't done it yet, but here's the thing. Something happened in a Facebook group a couple of weeks ago that was so incredible for a lot of reasons. The first reason that it was incredible was because a vendor spoke out so directly and so clearly to a particular designer. And he said throughout the entire thing, this is not directed at you. This is based on my previous experiences with other designers. So very clearly, this is not a reflection of this particular designer's business practices. Okay? It is a reflection on the experiences that this vendor has had with other designers. But the designer posted it in the group because based on what I'm explaining to you and what was true is she had not crossed this vendor yet. She had not acted inappropriately. She had not conducted business in a poor way. And he was just like, rah. And so she was legitimately like, what is going on here? Like, I just asked for a quote. And the thing was, the reaction in the Facebook group was all over the place. From this is ridiculous, walk away from this man, all the way to the people that shared my opinion, which was this is a vendor to hang on to for dear life. And while many of us did not agree that his wrath was misdirected. And I'm going to read it to you. He wasn't disrespectful. He was direct, and he was blunt, and he was less than politically correct, is what I would call it. But he was never mean, and he was never cutting, and he was never personalizing it, to her. But the thing is, again, as it not being directed to this particular designer, it took her off guard. But it really epitomizes what vendors go through. And I'm going to suggest to you, after you look at this and think about it and digest it, it's what you go through too on the other end, which was my point when I looked at it and I read it and I express my opinion on it, because I know that for the last 2 years on this podcast, I have championed you standing in your space, to take Sandra Funk's line, standing in your space and deciding and teaching your clients how to do business with you. And so when a vendor stands in their space and wants to teach you how to do business with them, you cannot look at it sideways, let alone take offense to it. So I'm going to share this exact. I had permission from the designer to share it, and I'm going to read it to you because it is, I thought, quite direct and quite powerful. And I think it might be at the heart of the lesson of how to work with your vendor, but how to turn around and express your needs to your client and how you want them to work with you. Now, I will say we all have to be a little less direct and a little more politically correct, okay? However, for these purposes, for his purpose and our purpose, we are not communicating with our clients in this podcast, all right? So here we go. It says, hi, so-and-so. Thanks. Okay, I'm going to be very direct and honest with you. Remember, this is not about you personally. I have lost more money than I made working with designers in 2017. This is a wallpaper hanger. I've had my measurements and my wallpaper totals questions so that not enough paper has been ordered and I'm expected to come back another day and finish it for free. I've had designers try to refigure my wallpaper totals in AutoCAD because they think I'm ordering too much. Of course, the results are wrong and we are back to not having enough paper or having way too much, and I get blamed for it in front of the client so the designer can save face. I've had the client change their mind about doing the job and I was never told. Then I show up to the house and they wonder why I'm there. I've had designers decide that the paint contractor or the floor guys can determine and change my schedule for me. And the best one is that the designer withholds the client's contact info from me so they can control every situation. Then they forget to tell the client that I'm coming over. More days are lost and they want the deposit back because they think I was never there. When I say that grass cloths and expensive fabrics cannot go in a bathroom or a kitchen because you can't get the front of that paper wet, don't question me and make me hang it anyway. Then expect me to rehang it for free when it does get stained from water spots. These are just some of the examples of what 2017 has been like. I've been doing this for 35 years now, and I'm damn good at what I do, and I believe that I know what I'm talking about. Believe me, I'm not trying to be boastful or conceited. I am just giving you examples of the excuses and reasons for not being paid and or thrown under the bus so that designer looks right and I'm wrong due to their mistakes. So, if after reading this, you think that none of this will happen and you agree to the following terms, I will work with you. Here are the terms. I want everything up front. No returns, no rescheduling, and no refunds, and no questions asked. You take my advice on how paper acts in certain situations, like putting a grass cloth in a bathroom. You don't change my measurements in AutoCAD or anything else and expect me to come back to finish the job you change the numbers on for nothing. If there is a cancellation for any reason, I will charge you full price to reschedule another day or days. I will not lose a day or days of work due to other contractors or indecisions or any other wishy-washy excuses. Again, this is no reflection on you personally. I've just written more checks to designers in 2017 than I have received, and that is not a lie. I'm going to work, if I'm going to work with any designer, they need to sign a contract under my terms listed above. I'm a business, not a charity. That's a pretty bold statement by a vendor to a designer. I have to say, I've been a designer's vendor for 35 years, and I might have thought a few of those things in my mind, but I've never said them as plainly as directly. Maybe one time, and you've heard me talk about it on the show. I'll take that back. You've heard me talk about that. But the thing about it is that he has so many valid points. You think about it. You think about when it's not you to the vendor, but you to the client. Think about if and when you made an appointment with a client for a consultation and you charged $500, say, for your first initial $200 consultation. Say you charge $85. I don't care what you charge. The point is that when you make that appointment, have you ever driven out and gone to that appointment and rang the doorbell and nobody's there? And then you called the cell phone number that you had for the client and they answered and they're like, oh, so sorry. Completely forgot about our appointment. Oh, yes, I'm at Mahjong, or I'm getting my nails done. Or my boss made me stay to work late. It really isn't relevant if the reason is frivolous, like I'm getting my nails done, or legit, like I've been delayed at a meeting. The point is that you have driven all the way out there and they didn't have the courtesy to advise you that the meeting would be canceled. And have you ever billed that client for that meeting, even when they didn't show up? Of course you did not. You did not. I mean, if there's anybody listening that ever has, you email me because I want to talk to you, okay? So the thing is that you let it go, but you let it go once, you let it go twice. How many times have you let it go with the same client? I'll bet you've never let it go with the same client. And the thing is that when a vendor works with you, it's different than the relationship with a client, a tiny bit different in this way. your client, you work with your client. You want that client for the lifetime of that client. It's true. You do. I know that you do. But see, because this is where I have this rub where I am doing retail and trade. So I understand both sides. I understand being the vendor, but I also understand what you go through as the designer to the consumer, because I have that same relationship with my consumers. And so I understand when I go to meet a consumer client, I'm going with the hope and the intention of closing that particular project and earning that sale. But yes, in the back of my mind, will I sell that client 2, 3, 4, 5 more times? Because, of course, I do have the experience of having clients that have been clients for 30 plus years. You've heard me talk about it ad nauseum, right? So yes, I understand that. But here's the difference. When I'm the vendor and you are my designer that I work with, and this wallpaper man is looking at you as the designer, the latitude that we give you is so much greater. A missed appointment isn't nearly as upsetting the first, second, or third time as it is with a stranger consumer. Okay? So you may be at your wit's end when you have driven all the way out to meet a consumer and they have not shown up for their meeting. What I want to tell you is, think about that. When the vendor goes out to meet you or just go to do his work because it's been scheduled, and like he's saying, the project has been delayed because the trade before him didn't finish and you've got 15,000 details, so you have not advised him not to go ahead and schedule that day. He's not going to have that same reaction the first time as he is with a stranger. He's going to say, this is a designer. He or she gives me a lot of business. I'm going to let it go. I have to be a team member. It's important that the whole team functions together. It's important to me to be part of this team because this isn't just one project this year. This is one project every week, every month, every whatever you give them. But there does come a point that a vendor like this wallpaper guy turns around and says, uncle, stop. It's enough. And so we often talk on the show about how important your vendor team is, your trade team is to you. And it's easy in the moment to say that. It is. I know. Okay. But do you really do it? Okay. Do you really do it? And the thing is that I want to share with you that until you're strong and standing in your space as a vendor, it also gets very hard to tell you no. Okay? So what I'm expressing is there might have been 15, 20 years ago, an interior designer would want something done on a certain date, a certain time, or whatever it would be. And it's unreasonable. It's unrealistic. But I want the business. It's only the first couple of times I've worked with the designer or the first time, la, 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 la. And as a younger business person, you tend to do just what designers do as younger designers. Okay. And then what happens is you find yourself letting that designer down. And then little by little, you realize that it's a lot easier to be stronger up front and risk not having the project start, then yes. And at the end of the project, it didn't come off. Okay. So, but it takes a while to learn that as a business person, to have the hard conversation. Do you remember the show with Lee Cockrell, the senior vice president of Walt Disney World Operations? It was amazing, Power Talk Friday. If you missed it, please go back and listen to it. It was one of my favorites because I was totally fangirling and gaga over Lee Cockrell. But what he said was, when you do the hard things, everything becomes easier. When you do the easy things, everything becomes harder. And so what happens is it sounds like to me that this particular wallpaper hanger was doing the easy thing for a long time. It was easier to accept that an installation was canceled and he wasn't advised. It was easier to accept that he had to go back and hang wallpaper the second or third day because enough hadn't been ordered the first time. It was easier not to make a stink in front of everybody when they blamed him for having too much paper on the project when he knew darn well that he had specified a certain amount and somebody else had decided a different amount was necessary. And now what he was finally coming to, that it was smarter to do the hard thing first, which is to lay down the law, which is to lay down the parameters, which is to teach his designers how to work with him. Okay? And so I don't fault this wallpaper designer because I want to believe that that's what I've been trying to empower you to do for these last 2 years, which is to teach your clients how to work with you. If you don't want to text after 6 o'clock, what have we said? Say it at the beginning of the contract. Say it at the beginning of the relationship. I will not communicate after 6 o'clock in the evening. You are free to email me every minute from 6 p.m. to 7 a.m., but don't expect an answer until I open up my doors at 9. Whatever it is. How about I won't communicate by text? That's a very common thing that we've heard on the podcast, that designers prefer not to communicate by text because there's no record of it. I have to say for myself personally, I really detest communicating with my designer clients and my retail clients by text. I hate it. I mean, I'm gonna say it out loud. I hate it. Other than I'm on time, I'm running late. Here's where my ETA is. I love that, and I'm all on board with that. But instruct me, ask me questions, give me updates on a project, N-O, because you know what? In a day, I'm gonna get 40 texts. And if I'm in the middle of something, think about it. You have been in the same position. You're in the middle of something and something comes through by text. It's important. You look at it and you open it, and now you don't have the reminder that it's to be done. And I've literally found those messages 4 and 5 days later. Like, I want to cry when that happens. So yes, if you're doing business with me, don't send me a text if it's about anything other than what time I'm getting there or what time you're getting there. And so that's just it. You teach people how to do business with you. So when we talk on this podcast all the time about empowering you to stand in your space and to set your guidelines and to lay out the way your business will be run. When somebody else does it for you, you need to acknowledge it. You need to look at it at the very least, right? You need to, at the very least, look at the points that this man is making and examine it. Think about it from his standpoint. How about the point about throwing under the bus? This is a pet peeve of mine. None of us are perfect. We all make mistakes. God knows the designers listening to this podcast that I am fortunate enough to be the person that does their window treatments. They know that I make mistakes. I make no bones about it. I happen to think that we clean them up very well, and that's our particular area, because I just feel like as human beings, we're going to make mistakes. And am I saying that my mistakes are all, totally necessary? Like, what am I saying? What I'm saying is, are some of them out of negligence? Are some of them out of like being too busy? Are some of them out of like, are you kidding me, Luann? How did you do that? Absolutely. Are some of them out of left field? Are some of them things that have never crossed my path before that I'm just like, whoa, had no idea, new on me, and learned that like you learned it? There's both types of mistakes. But here's the thing. Whenever you grandstand and you throw your vendor under the bus, it really only comes back to bite you in the booty if you have a thinking client. Because a thinking client will say, didn't you hire that vendor? I had this just recently. I have a project going on with a designer right now. This is crazy. I'm going to tell you this flat out. My workroom for 1 year has made a single bedspread wrong for 1 year. How think about that. I can't believe I just told you that, right? Okay, this is real life. We all run businesses, and the 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 duty hits the fan, right? Now, I've been doing business with this designer for more than 20 years. Not to say that he's not a little out at the end of his rope on this. Fortunately, this is also a client of his that we've worked with him and her on several projects. And so we have some goodwill there. But I'm going to tell you what. I mean, does goodwill last you a year? I don't think so. And this was the point that I made to my workroom at the last time when it needed to be remade 2 weeks ago. First of all, I reminded them that they've worked with me for 30 years and that 15 or 20 years, that conversation would have been a heck of a lot different when I got to call them and tell them that the bedspread was wrong again, that the younger Luann was much more crazy and much more foul-mouthed and much more out of control. But I said to them, please don't mistake my control for acceptance. Please don't mistake my control in this conversation for that there's any part of it that's okay. The fact that I have sent this bedspread back to you 6 times in a year, and each time you've made an improvement to it, makes me sick to my stomach, honestly. Because why do I have to keep sending it back to you to get it better? But here's what happened. Here's the difference. And this is what I said to them. I said, each time that I go to my designer client, and in turn his client, I can't stand there, and I will not stand there and tell them how idiotic you are, because that only begs the question, why am I doing business with you? Okay? And so I said, and what I've been saying is, this is completely unnatural. It's an aberration. I've never had this. And it's the truth. These things are true. I've never had a situation in 35 years where I've had something go back and forth 6 times. I mean, think about it. My brain is frying over this particular project in plain English. But the point of it is that, and the last conversation the designer did say to me, he said point blank, Lou, we've done business a long time, and I know you've used this one workroom for a long time, but what is going on? And I said to him, I feel it. I feel you. I know what you're saying. But while this one particular thing has been happening, if I told you, I've probably had 150, 200 other projects come out perfectly fine. So it's not a reflection on the workroom. In the whole, in the big picture, there is a breakdown. And this is what I finally said to management, like, light a booty fire under the bedding department, get them a bottle of wine, do something, because honestly, if they make the next bedspread, on a twisted high, maybe it'll come out better. I mean, I did say that. But the point is that, there's no point in dragging down your vendor because it reflects on your decision to use the vendor. So I need you to understand that we all experience this, that I sit here on this podcast and I talk to these wonderful designers every week about the most amazing ways to run your business and make everything happy and wonderful. And I'm just like you. I'm in the trenches and I'm experiencing it. And when I saw this particular post in Facebook, I actually could experience it from both sides, both as the vendor and both as the, I'm going to say, purchaser. As a designer, you're the purchaser from the vendor. So for me, I'm the purchaser to the workrooms, and I'm also the vendor to you. And it is the thing. It is about the communication. And so a couple of tips when working with your vendors beyond this, okay? One of the things that people do is that they think that in an effort to be organized and in an effort to make sure that all information is sent, is that they send it as they have it. They send it as it changes. And I have to say that with all of the designers that we work with, on top of all the consumers that we work with, that when you fire off an email to your particular vendor, whether it's your window treatment vendor, your kitchen vendor, your tiler, whoever, your painter, whatever it is, take a moment and think about their world. So picture your painter. Your painter might have, depending on his crew, might have 10 or 12 or 15 projects going on. And say your project is a full house. And so maybe there are 12 rooms in a full house, and maybe there are 12 colors, for crying out loud, in a full house, right? So even if there's 6 colors of paint for a full house, think about what you might be doing. You might be, in an effort to feel and be and have your life buttoned up, you send a paint schedule and you're like, there's what it is. These are the 6 colors. These are the rooms, yada, yada. And then like 2 days later, your client calls you and says, Sally wants her room a different color. Oh, okay. So you send off an email. Oh, by the way, we changed bedroom 4 from pink fluff to, yellow carnation, whatever. And then 2 days later, you're like, oh, did we tell them that we wanted flat paint on XYZ room? Okay. So, by the way, flat paint on XYZ room. And I don't really care if you say it all professional or you say by the way. The point is that it is not unusual for a vendor to receive multiple emails of instruction, quote unquote, as efficient updates on a project. And I know that in your mind, you're thinking, I am on top of my stuff. As soon as there's a change, I'm letting my vendor know. But for your vendor, it is completely overwhelming to have information in so many different emails. Because when they go, think about the painter. He's going to finally get to paint day. He's going to finally get to the day that he goes and he places the order for all the paint, and he's going to bring his crew to the job. So there is one particular initial purchase order with all the paint schedule. But he knows in the back of his mind there's been like a billion updates to that. And I have to say, it's my experience, if you're a designer that updates the schedule, the full schedule with full information each time, well, good on you. Okay, but 99% will just send the individual updates and the changes for the project for the pieces that it pertains to. And so think about that paint contractor. He can't just print off your purchase order. He's got to go and search his emails for all the different changes and updates. And if he's like me, I'm sweating it out. Before I go to place your orders for your drapes and your window treatments and everything else, I'm thinking, did I collect every last email? I do like 90 multiple searches. I search your assistant's name. I search your name. I search the name of your UPS driver. I search everything in my email to make sure that I have all the updates. Because the purchase order I have very often was done at the beginning and it was not updated. The number of times that I get a purchase order for window treatments that just says draperies living room, okay? No fabric, no trim, or draperies with trim, fabric to be decided, trim to be decided, and then you're looking in ultimately subsequent emails for this updated information. And so I have compassion for it. I understand that you're in the moment of sending these off feeling like a rock star, but there's nothing rock star about it, I promise you. And I'm just going to take a moment to just give a plug to our sponsor, Mydoma Studio, and that's why when I've talked with Sarah Daniele, the CEO of Mydoma, on the program before, and she has expressed that in a platform like Mydoma Studio, all of the communication surrounding a particular client is captured in one place between the designer and the vendor. That's why I go crazy pants for that. That's why I love that. Because I understand and have compassion for you, that you're out there and you're on the front line and you're changing things. Your client is asking for changes, or you're just recalling, oh my goodness, I sent the paint schedule and I didn't say that it's flat paint XYZ in this location. I get that. It's not that I don't get that. But what I love about what my Doma does is having it all in one spot so that as your vendor, I can, when I finally have your purchase order and received all of your fabrics and all of your trims and your deposit money, I can go to one place and go, okay, here's everything. And I don't have to stress and worry and wonder, did she change it in a text? Did she this? Did she that? And so again, please don't take it as criticism, because one of the things at WindowWorks is that I do what you do and face the consumer. And so that's why I allow a lot of the designers that work with us to string out. And I don't send crazy pants emails like this wallpaper guy did, because I know what it's like to be on the front line and to have changes and to not take the time to necessarily reinvent the whole wheel on a thing and redo it. To a point, I understand that. Okay? So here's what I'm going to say. To a point, because when I ultimately, here's the difference. If I do a purchase order, a quote, I should say, to you, if I do a quote to you, I understand that. So I understand okay, so you change your fabric 3 times and my last iteration of the quote to you doesn't have the latest change of fabric. Okay. So I'm like almost saying to you, you haven't updated it to me, I haven't updated to you, it's fabric, it's in the bedroom, whatever. I'm making an assumption when you finally make a purchase order to me, you will attach and put in the right fabric. But what I can say to you is, where I lose the compassion is because when I go to place your order with the workroom, there's not one detail that can be missing before that work order is considered a real work order and it starts to move. So you will often send the PO off to your window treatment professional, to your tiler, to whoever, with details missing. You may have sent your money, you will have sent 3/4 of your details, and you will expect the project to move. But what I know is on our end, when we go to work with the vendors and the wholesalers and the trades that we work with, not one detail can be missing. I can send every single thing. There can be 20 details needed for a work order to execute your window treatments with my workroom. I can send 19 of those details. And that 20th detail, if it's not sent, they're never going to remind me. They're not going to ask me. They're not going to tell me. It will sit there for 1 week or 1 year, and nothing will happen with it. Whereas when you work with your vendors, if you gave your painter a schedule that included the paint color for every room except one, and it was 12 rooms, and you agreed on a date to start painting, what if he didn't show up on that day because one color was missing? Right? Think about it. You'd be like, you're out of your mind. We agreed on this date 6 weeks ago. I've got a full project going. You can't possibly paint 12 rooms in one day. Why would you not show up when I have one paint color missing? You could have shown up. You could have worked for 3 weeks before you needed that 12th color. And that's actually all true. But that's the point. You lean on your vendors to do things in absence of clarity, in absence of every detail buttoned up. And when that happens over and over again, messages like this come to you. Okay? So, of course, this message should not come to a designer that was guilty of these things. This wallpaper hanger just finally at the end of his rope. Okay? But what I have to say is, like I said, on the other end of it, not my workrooms. You think Hunter Douglas, I can enter everything except one detail and they're going to make a blind? It's not happening. They'll sit there in limbo forever. They don't care. They don't wonder. I had a delivery date. I said in the notes I needed to deliver it by a certain date. It doesn't matter. If I didn't fill in all the details, nothing is happening. And so that's the funny thing about it is we deal with the cutthroat on one side, but we deal with you personally on the other side. And we have compassion for you because we're human beings and we understand what you go through, and we totally, if you're a smart vendor, you understand how many hats a designer has to wear, and so you give latitude. But when you give latitude over and over again and you reach the end of the rope, then an email like this comes through. So I hope you take this for what it's worth. Basically, what I'm saying to you is that every one of us can do better. That's for sure, me included. Every single one of us can do better. But when somebody is giving you the gift of outlining the 4 things that you need to do in order to have a productive relationship with him, this is a person that you run to, not run away from. This is a person that you say, thank you. You've made it so clear to me how it is that I can successfully work with you. And when you just check off those 4 things, you're golden. And here's the other thing. What's really cool about it is there's 2 things that's cool about it. You can see that he's thought very clearly about what it is to make a project successful. So if you adhere to those, you will have likely a very successful project. And what's the worst thing that can happen? If you adhere to those 4 things and the project isn't successful, you just look at him and go, buddy, I did the 4 things. This is on you now, right? You don't have to do the blame game. You don't have to be crazy pants about it. You don't have to make them feel like a son of a gun for it. But you can just look at them and say, I did the 4 things. This is on you. Okay? So take it for what it's worth. Little lesson, right? We all have space to do better. We all have space to grow. We all have space to understand and have compassion. But I really wanted to say the overriding thing of this is that if you go back and you listen to the beginning of the podcast again, when I read this letter to you, if you switch the personas, if you switch the wallpaper hanger for you and designer for your client, I think you will understand that despite his directness and despite his lack of tact, really, I mean, it was harsh, let's be real, it is exactly the type of letter that you wish you could give to every client, right? You wish you could, because all you're asking for at the end of the day is simple respect. Change the schedule, let me know. If I tell you something, respect it. If you say to a client, this wall can't be moved, it won't work, or this color is the wrong color, it won't work. All you want them to do is acknowledge that you're saying that from a standpoint of all of your combined experience that brought you to that point. And that's what he's saying is, I actually hang wallpaper. You can put it on AutoCAD all darn day long, but I actually do it. So do me a favor. Go back now and listen to the beginning of the podcast and do as I ask. Take every time he uses the word I or me and put yourself in his place. And every time he uses designer, put in there client. And I promise you that you will understand how important it is to just respect what somebody else does for a living, and how important it is to come to the transaction prepared to be the grown-up that you are and to take responsibility. And when you do that, then magic can happen. Then your vendor team can really be exactly that, a team member. Okay? That's all any vendor wants to be. A good vendor, right? Okay? Wants to be part of your team and to be a respected part of your team. And of course, we have lots of responsibilities on our part as being part of your team. We have the responsibility of making sure our work is checked and double checked and triple checked. I had a situation just today where I had a conversation with a designer that I do business with, and I went into Manhattan for the 3rd time to check measurements. And both her and her client thanked me for doing that. And what was so cool about the designer was she said to me, how can we avoid that being necessary the next time? So awesome. I mean, proactive and saying, I appreciate that you did it, but how could we avoid that? And the truth is that I said to her that I would love to avoid it too. I don't want to go into New York 3 times to measure 7 windows 3 times. But the reality is that I understand that life happens. I understand that we get into a project and we were running out of daylight and the contractor wanted to go home and we thought that we had covered the details and we hadn't. And the reality is that I knew it was no more her fault that I needed to go back and measure than it was my fault. There was no fault. It was just I had pictures of the project. She had pictures of the project. They weren't clear to me. It wasn't clear to her. We were having discrepancies on what we had recalled as agreements and not agreements. And what I said to her and I said to her client is that all day long, I will check it as many times as I need to on the front end so that hopefully on the back end, it doesn't need to be redone, right? I mean, it makes sense, right? Wouldn't I rather take 3 trips into Manhattan to make sure I'm clear on what I'm doing than 1 trip and wonder, deliver, and then have to redo? Yeah, well, all day long. That's how I look at it. So, but I value and appreciate the designer that she wanted some information and feedback to know how it could have been changed and how it could be different going forward. And if I had a suggestion, I would have shared it with her. But in this particular case, the way the circumstances went, it couldn't have been avoided. It was no one's fault. It just was the way the project was. It was a detailed project with a lot of different window conditions. That's it, period. End of discussion. You write it off. You do what you got to do. So it's about communication. Do that. Communicate with your vendors. Make sure that you give benefit of the doubt. That's a big thing. If you are working with a vendor that you respect and that you've worked with before and something goes wrong, give benefit of the doubt. I am so ever grateful to this designer that is, with the designer with the bedspread. He's sort of doing with me what I'm doing with the workroom. He's saying, I love you. I've worked with you 100 years. This is insanity. It's beyond me, but I know you'll ultimately make it right. And so based on the many years of relationship and business and friendship, he's giving me a pass like I'm giving my workroom. We're all standing up and we're all saying, get it done. But none of us are going to crazy lengths of grandstanding and saying things that are unkind and untrue and unnecessary. So, all right. So I'm like rambling here, right? I just thought it was an amazing lesson in that Facebook group and the responses were all over the place. And so I wanted to share it with you guys, and I hope that it helped you. I hope that it helped you think about things from different standpoints. And I hope that if you struggle with having parameters and boundaries with your clients, that it helped you in that way too. I will say you probably have to be a little nicer in your approach. But it's the bottom line. In your personal life and in your professional life, you teach people how to treat you. And this wallpaper hanger finally said, this is it. We're going to start a new relationship. You're a new designer, and this is how we're going to do it. So hats off to him. And I'm glad for the designer because she starts her relationship off with a new wallpaper hanger, and she knows exactly the 4 ways that she can make sure the job is successful. And wouldn't we all love that in every single thing we do? Just give me the roadmap. Tell me the answers to the quiz. That's basically what he said. Here's the answers to the quiz, and you will get 100% every time. So, alrighty, guys. It's been real. I hope you like this little Power Talk Friday. There has been a lot of requests for 2 years for me to do a vendor episode. I have no idea if this is the type of vendor episode that you expected. Would love to know your feedback and to know what you thought about it. And I hope that you had a moment of clarity somewhere at some point during the episode. Thank you so much. Don't forget, you want to be on the email list so you know what's going on. You can always text the number 444-999, and when the text is there, you put in the word Design Biz, DESIGNBIZ. No caps, no spaces. Just text on your phone 444999 and enter the word design biz, and you will be on our email list, and you will know about the parties like the birthday party. You will know about Blanch Garcia coming to the Lunch and Learn at Window Works on Monday, February 19th. You know, the Blanch Garcia episode a couple of weeks ago. I can't tell you how many people reached out to me and to Blanch with questions on how do you do this and how do you work her design fee and the execution part and all the things. And it was just like we were having a conversation. She's like, it's a little easier if I just come to you and answer everybody's question. So if you are in the New York, New Jersey metro area, Monday, February 19th, Blanch Garcia will be in the showroom doing a lunch and learn, and that is going to be a really, really meat and potatoes workshop on running your interior design business. So, and if you're coming in from out of town for the birthday party on Wednesday, February 21st, just saying, maybe make a couple days out of it. That could be cool too. Alrighty. If you are interested in coming to the birthday party, you can go to luannigara.com/party, where you can click on the link there to the Eventbrite RSVP. It's a free party. It's generously hosted by Lefroy Brooks, and I'm so grateful and thankful to them. And a lot of the previous podcast guests have already RSVP'd, as well as a lot of listeners as well. We're approaching about 100 people so far coming to the party, so it's going to be a heck of a lot of fun. I hope you'll join us if you're in the area, and I want to say to you thanks tons, as always, for tuning into the show and to listening and to sharing it with your friends, and I'm just so happy and grateful that I have gotten to know you guys. So that's it. Take some action today. Do something for your business. Make it better. Do one thing. Make it better, right? Decide to be excellent.